Oh, hello, yeah, well, another working week, isn't it, for us working people? Well, not me, obviously, because I'm not a proper worker, am I? Not a real worker, no. No, not like a proper person. There was a reasonable amount of that at the weekend. Anyway, we'll come back to that. But yesterday I did have to, well, not necessarily smile, but I don't know. There are things that are such obvious irony-free zones with the British media that you can understand why people walk away from it. We had this in the Telegraph, which was a gem. 1 in 5 Britons now anti-Semitic. Survey finds almost half UK population believe Israel treats Palestinians like Nazis treated Jews. Yes, and it's the campaign against anti-Semitism, which is funded by various people that are very, very concerned about anti-Semitism. But the thing about this, of course, is that we end up with the IHRA definition, which basically means that there is only one country in the world that you can criticise their foreign policy and be a racist, okay? Yeah, you can criticise Saudi Arabia or Afghanistan or Pakistan or Bangladesh or any other Muslim countries you want, and you won't be a racist because you're criticising their foreign policy. You could criticise Canada's foreign policy, but you won't be a racist because it's predominantly Christian. And I could go on about various other sort of Buddhist states if you fancy, but no. There's only one state in the world whereby if you criticise their foreign policy, if you liken certain things to other things, you're automatically a nasty bigot. Just the one. Which, whenever I see comments about when we mustn't allow backdoor blasphemy laws, I think, Anyway, Jake Wallace-Simmons, again with no sense of irony, was writing at the same time in the Telegraph about how dreadfully authoritarian the country is becoming. Yes, indeed, all those people being picked up for holding little signs saying, I don't really like people being maimed when they probably aren't terrorists. Awful, awful types, aren't they? Yes. Dreadful bigots, the bunch of them. Anyway, speaking potentially of which, we did have the end of the Reform conference at the weekend, so people will be going home. My entire feed of Twitter was swarmed on Sunday morning with pictures of very, 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 very young Reformed councillors. There's one here, you may notice. Yeah, and, you might think that I'm wrong to criticise, vast swarms of basically little Tory boys. Yeah, do think that classic 80s comedy staple. But if the Green Party were to champion a whole bunch of 18, 19-year-olds as major players in their councils in terms of being in charge of budgets, what would the right-wing press say? And again, it's that complete and utter double standard. But the thing that intrigued me most of all about this photograph, and we'll come back to some of the people here, is have you noticed the way that light totally refracts around Darren Grimes? I'd actually looked at this quite a few times before I actually realised that Darren Grimes was in the picture. It's almost like he's actually not human enough to be there. Anyway, there they are, the archetypal kind of Tory boys. There's the inevitable person in a hat, because young people never know when it's right to take off your hat, and for some bizarre reason there's a very old bloke at the back. Anyway, I'm wondering how many of these young people, having had contact with Darren Grimes given his reputation, have some interesting stories to tell. But maybe that's just me being slightly rude. Anyway, we did have the inevitable parades of other people showing up, with people fawning over, Victorian relics like this one. Again, we'll come back to some of these people. You've got to smile at Councillor Charles Pugsley. Yes, if I was going to make up a name, that would be it. Let's face it, yeah? We've had a number of videos as well, so you can delight with these.
So I'm here right in front of the Reform UK bus, day 2 of conference, and we've got all the momentum in British politics now. In Scotland, we are pushing ahead in the polls, working hard for your support, working hard for every single vote, listening to your concerns. You've been let down for far too long. That's all about to change.
Mum and Dad work really, really hard to get everything we have, and I grew up listening to them talking about their lives and seeing Nigel Farage and talking about the same things that they were talking about at the table. And I'm not the only one like that. It's clear. A lot of people don't vote, and I believe that those people, a lot of them, are working class people who haven't got the time to go and vote, 2 haven't got the courage to go and vote, and 3 don't think their vote matters. That's why young people tend to vote left. The poll suggests that because they usually huddle together in unis, and it's interesting that people who are more educated seem to go more to the left when people who are perhaps less educated but more skillful go to the right. I think there is a balance because there are a lot of working class people, and they are finally getting a voice. And I mean, Reform is second place in the youth poll, so I don't doubt that that's going to go even higher.
Yes, indeed, rising stars. I do love the idea that for some bizarre reason, bad people like me, that are educated are likely to vote left wing. Awful, that, isn't it? Whereas skilled people, are less likely to, except, of course, actual reality doesn't bear that out, because if you look at the basic data in and around how people vote, the vast majority of Reform voters actually aren't very skilled people. They don't come from anything that you might regard as skilled working class. Sorry. Anyway, if you want to see this other councillors perhaps in more of their finer glory, we end up with this photograph. I mean, honestly, would you want to go and see this person with a concern? I wouldn't. I'm not going to say it's a cult, but you know, it sure as hell looks like a cult, isn't it? And in wider news, in terms of ways forward, it appears that, Reform have decided that they're going to make my life very interesting if they get into power. I do hope they do. We had this Teenage Reform Council leader describe sixth form as complete joke that only helps develop a woke mindset. Yes, indeed, it's that whole thing about skills people, yeah? You need skilled people, presumably, I don't know, in schools, do you? Or something, in the woodwork lessons. You need a skilled person, not a teacher, not a woodwork teacher. I don't know. Imagine if you had a woodwork teacher who had a woodwork degree, and at the same time they weren't skilled. I don't know how that's possibly going to work. I don't know. It's bizarre to me. Anyway, it's worthwhile digging into this one for a little bit because we had a choice quote from everyone's favourite I'm going to be in charge of welfare because I understand things, Mr. Lee Anderson, who was also speaking on the panel, said Reform UK will root out teachers who were brainwashing children, that's me, when asked about the possibility the government could seek to make the curriculum more diverse. I wonder what that means, because I thought diversity was a really bad thing, isn't it? No, not in this case. There are some teachers in our schools who are brainwashing our kids into their way of thinking. Yes, they're likely to do that. It is actually just called teaching, isn't it? If you don't like what someone is saying, it is inevitably brainwashing, isn't it? Yeah, that's kind of the way that one works, yeah? I brainwash kids, but a right-wing teacher who presumably still followed exactly the same curriculum, presumably wouldn't. I don't know. If anyone can explain to me how I brainwash kids, I'd be very, very interesting, because as far as I'm aware, that's the opposite of what I do. I'm sure lots of people in comments will want to make comments about that, but they haven't seen me teach, have they? No! You're just going on what you see online, aren't you? Yeah, you know them lefty teachers, they just teach them to be trans, don't they? Yeah, I do, but I don't do anything else. Certainly don't do any maths lessons. Anyway, coming on to other things that I do, when we get into power, we'll root these teachers out and hold them to account. So that's interesting, isn't it? I wonder how that process would work, because therefore you would have to have state-sponsored teachers on an ideological level. Reminds me of something in history. I can't think what history. Yeah. Ooh, let's think of history, shall we? He said they should be teaching children about the Industrial Revolution, which I do, and the First and Second World Wars, which I do, all the history of medicine, which I do, in the UK, rather than diversity nonsense. Yes, and I teach all of those things, actually, doing GCSE history. So I don't know. Perhaps what I need to do is be less educated whilst being a better teacher and more skilled. I don't know. I can't square that circle. Neither can Lee. And he's also talking out of his arse, of course, as indeed do all these other people. What they really mean is the teachers occasionally come out with things which are actually on the curriculum, which, because my mum and dad don't agree with them, I'm going to disagree with it as well. And therefore, whenever they say these things, they're trying to get round me. I don't think I should be in a school where I'm challenged in my beliefs. After all, I'm a snowflake. And suddenly when you put it like that, the whole thing slightly sounds like a completely different argument, doesn't it? Yes, we need safe spaces for reform counsellors before they go out there in the real world. But the basic problem that I have with this is, for all the farcical nonsense that there is with reform, who I'm still convinced won't actually make up a government, And what they act as is a conduit for some very, very awful and nasty stuff. And on the back of the basic little boys in reform that was going on at the weekend, there was an awful lot of very, very, very nasty stuff. Yes, it wasn't just anti-Semitism, it was something else. We had this from Reform UK Grassroots, notice the all capitals, lovely. Where in the 56 countries of the Muslim world could a British citizen be elected to their parliament and be allowed to swear on a Bible? But here in the UK, a Muslim can be elected to our parliament and swear on an oath on the Quran. We are so fooked. Yes, indeed. But of course, perhaps that Muslim person is a British citizen. Yeah? So I think you're missing something there in terms of any knowledge of exactly how the way that the UK Constitution works in terms of who's allowed to vote. Because, if you're a British citizen and an adult and you aren't deemed by courts to be mentally incapacitated or a member of the House of Lords or a member of the royal family, then you can actually vote. That's the way it works. You can also stand for Parliament if you're not disbarred. So, yeah, brilliant. But of course the problem is that it's a brown person. And brown people are automatically very, very dodgy. They work for other things, don't they? Yeah. Not like that nice Jake Simons. No, he wouldn't work for a foreign power, would he? No, all those Labour MPs that are Labour friends of his way, they wouldn't work for a foreign power, would they? No, they wouldn't, would they? No, they wouldn't. And to say so would probably be anti-Semitic, because after all, I'm venturing into, criticising certain countries' foreign policies, which is inherently bad. And of course, inevitably, when you end up with these kind of things that are sprung forth upon us, we end up with the very, very nasty. So we had the delightful Nick from Turning Point, who was leading a huge march, you can see it here, huge march from the disciples of Christ joining in. Dear God, save us from the disciples of Christ, if nothing else. Dead giveaway with the name. The annual March for Life, yes, and you can see there were upwards of 25 people. Now, you may think that that's fairly sad in terms of, the disciples of Christ and the rest of it. But there's an awful lot of American interest in British politics at the moment, and by God, the anti-abortionists are going to be here very soon. And having gone for the trans, they're going to line up abortion next, because after all, they really care about women, provided they're, staying at home, don't vote, and look after children. Still, never mind, I'm sure the Reform councillors agree with most of that as well. Because they will, won't they? Anyway, do have a glorious day. If you can do have a good Monday. And remember, no criticism of Israel. It's wrong. Enjoy.